for publishers. At any time during the presentation, listeners can submit questions electronically through the Q&A tab on the lower left-hand side of your screen. We'll answer those questions at the end of the presentation. When addressing questions, please choose to all panelists. If you're having any technical issues during the webcast, please email jhansen@siia.net. Before we get started, one quick note on some upcoming SIA events. On January 22nd, we'll be hosting Buying and Selling Content, which examines models for content licensing from how the marketplace is changing to how information providers can make more money from their content to international licensing and the role of social media and mobile play in content licensing. This event features speakers from Thomson Reuters, The Economist, Copyright Clearance Center, and Twitter, and we hope you can join us. Be on the lookout soon for more information about the SIPA Annual Conference, which is June 3rd to 5th in Washington, D.C., and dedicated to independent paid content providers, and also the ABM and Information Industry Summit, which brings together the media world of ABM and the data and information services world of SIA's content division. With that, I'll turn it over to Daniel Mayer at Themis. Daniel, take it away.
Thank you very much, Matt, for the introduction. Hi to everyone. We'd like to thank you for your time today. We thought we'd structure our talk in two parts. In the first part, we're going to try and maybe go through some of the key points that we see regarding semantic enrichment in publishing. What is it about, and where's the value? And as a provider of technology, Themis decided to leave the stage to Bill entirely regarding this question about value, because we feel that the best insights come from the users themselves. So I will be letting Bill really go into that. And a second part of the presentation today will focus more on the practical aspects of what does a practitioner, an experienced practitioner as Bill, have to say about some of the key learnings he's had in implementing the technology over the years, which he's done at Wolters Kluwer, but also previously, and therefore what are his recommendations as to what to do to get your practice started and to make it a success. So with that, I'll just go into the first part. For those of you who have never implemented this kind of technology, we felt it would be useful to give you a brief and visual introduction to what it does and what it's about. So here, what we have in the bottom here of the diagram, here is a sentence which comes from a healthcare-focused document where a number of items of information are shared, and it's mostly about a side effect of a drug being administered to a patient. The first low-level operation that's going on when you're enriching your content is for software to read documents automatically and recognize words and sentences and the grammatical role of each word in those sentences. So as you can see here, after analysis, we've sliced the sentence in words, and each word has been tagged. This one is a verb, this one is an article, and so on. Through reasoning, it's then possible to go to a higher level of abstraction and recognize objects of interest. So here we're talking about healthcare, so it's healthcare objects or entities, as we call them in the jargon. So we have a symptom being described here. The hair loss is a symptom. We have a drug name that is being referred to, and carbamazepine, obviously. We have dosage information and so on. And these are objects of interest for people in healthcare, and those are things that we're able to recognize in text. If we go yet to another level of higher abstraction, we'll also recognize links or relationships between these objects that are expressed in these documents. And in this case, we have a claim which is being made in the document about a symptom which is induced by the administration of the drug, and the software recognizes that there's a link between the administration of carbamazepine and the hair loss, and it also captures surrounding information. So what we've done here in these steps is to go from something which is entirely unstructured, which is free text that was written in this case by possibly by a scientist or a lab researcher, and you're going from this free text to a highly structured version of that, which contains essentially the key items of information that are referred to in a structured manner. So you may have heard of the term triple this past year. It's become fairly fashionable. This type of information is what people are talking about when they refer to triples. This is what we're talking about. Structuring the information that's contained in that free text in something that can be exploited by content management systems and content processing workflows. So that's really the low-level view of what's going on. Now, if we take it at a higher level and we look at the entire document, obviously, it's not about only one sentence. It's about a number of sentences in there, and there's a title, there are authors, and so on. So there's all sorts of information that can be harvested from the document. Some of the information is just the fact that this document mentions this and that other topic. And again, this is a healthcare example, but Bill will be giving examples relative to the legal domain. And obviously, depending on your business, depending on your sector, the objects of interest won't all be healthcare related. They'll be relevant for you, obviously, in your field. But again, the document itself can now be characterized or described based on the items of information that we've harvested here. And essentially what that means is each item of information can be considered as an additional item of metadata that describes the document in terms of its contents. And essentially, I think at this level, the point of this technology is really to enrich the metadata that you store and that describes your documents. And the question of value is really how can you make use of that information, and what value does it bring for you as a business? And to go into that, I'd like to introduce Bill. So Bill, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'll hand it off to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Daniel. Let me just get So, from a point of view of a publishing business, there's several ways, and at least 4 ways I can think of that we would create new value using content enrichment. I mean, the first is really extracting latent value that already exists in the investment we've made in content, in capturing expertise in that content. A second approach, once you do that, you can start to look at ways to create new products. Because as you're taking your legacy content, which in our case, in some cases, was created for a book, you've brought it into a digital environment. It starts to create new opportunities for new products as we go forward. Another really important aspect for us, though, is increasing the productivity of our subject matter experts. And our subject matter experts, we want them to spend more time on those, important value-added activities, and try to get them away from some of the more simple activities that just take away some of our resources. But really, a fourth point that we hear, and we talk about data, you hear big data, but you need to create that data to drive analytics and to get insights about your users. You can use the metadata you create through semantic enrichment. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to go through a few examples of different things you can do from a publishing perspective that you can use semantic technology to create new value. So first, you can use it to drive that next generation research experience. It really starts right at the beginning from the search box, in that you can help your users with the search. So you can start, instead of just suggesting alternative queries, you can suggest answers at that point of entry. You can do that by, in the next part, you can really do that deep analysis of the query and actually match it to metadata that you've created. And using that, you can certainly drive that suggestion for the user and save them a lot of time, and that's the key value proposition for that, is to save them time. But you can also then improve the retrieval of results through new approaches to relevance, looking at different data assets, and also linking multiple sources of information through the metadata that you've created. It can come from a full text search, or it can come from a database at that point. So the last thing you do, you can tell them about your results. And we've all seen this faceted navigation approach, and that's all driven by metadata. But what you can then start to do is get more sophisticated in that and use it to help not only through faceted navigation, but then use it to more specifically do a guided search. For example, just by providing them the ability to kind of narrow their focus based on the analysis of the taxonomy that you can find or the concepts you find in their query. Another example is, how can we integrate content into software? We have, fairly complex forms that we deal with in regulatory environments. One certainly being your typical tax form. But in the end, what you can look at is the tax form itself provides context and provides a lot of context that map to concepts that are in our content. So if you use that context, you can then very precisely connect, our experts' compliance tips in working with this tax form, or even a particular FAQ answering a question about one particular concept in that document. In this case, we're talking about net operating loss. So this is a significant value to the person at the point they actually need that expertise in order to fill out this particular tax form. Another interesting approach to add value, or another important way to add value, is to integrate the content information into their workflows. So this particular example is, we all and all our customers often use, Microsoft Word to author content. In this case, they're authoring a paper about in the medical domain. But we want to assist them and say, okay, how do we understand and link and provide them more information? And so what we can do is use content enrichment to analyze the document. In this case, we can pull out very particular concepts that they're working on and then tie them to a taxonomy that we built, which ultimately is lets you connect them to your content. In this case, we can connect directly to some content. This is from a wiki page, but in the profession, you would use your professional content in a publishing domain. So whether it's legal, medical, or tax. Like other professionals, the other thing that we can really do with content enrichment is to start to help our customers manage the so-called information overload problem. So in the case of regulatory environments, and there's an incredible amount of both volume and velocity of information that's thrown at our customers. And in this case, it could be from regulations, content that comes out of administrative agencies, like rulings and guidance, or if you're just doing research and want to be able to synthesize studies and other research papers. So right now, that information volume provides limits your customer from growing their business because there's not a level of automation. So you can implement and help them implement a level of automation that lets them increase and grow their business, and basically lets them at the same bottom line. So it's about adding automation to let a business grow, let them grow themselves. So in this case, it could be a law firm or it could be a tax firm that can handle more clients because they have some support to manage that information overload. Another way we can create value is we know as publishers that our clients use the internet. Right? They're always looking in other places. We're not always the sole source or the first source of information. So in addition to using Google to search, but they also go to various websites, including government sites. So what we want to be able to do is link them back to our products and bring them to our products. So in this example, I'm just looking at the Australian Tax Authority, the ATO, and our business in Australia has created a freemium product where they have some of these pages out there on the web. And so we can use content enrichment to connect those topics and concepts back to our products. And we're always looking for ways to drive our customers back into our own products. Lest we forget, our subject matter experts also have to manage that information overload problem, right? So they're the ones that are distilling and synthesizing all this information that's coming from these various sources into high value add content to help our customers drive their businesses or solve problems for their customers or for themselves. So we need to support them, and we can support them by applying content enrichment to the problem of managing that information overload so they can focus on those high value add tasks like providing detailed analysis or practice tools or even providing news to provide alerts to our customers for things they need to be aware of. In the end, I mean, especially for our Walters Core, I see we are a business that deals in expertise, and we want to find ways to have our subject matter experts deliver that expertise wherever and when it's needed. And that's really the key in the overall picture. That's what content enrichment value is about. It really connects our subject matter experts in new ways to our customers so that they can add value both to their businesses or to their work and save time and save money. So with that, so that's where I see, I believe content enrichment creates a lot of value for publishers.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah. So thank you for these examples and items to look at for value creation. Now, in your experience, I think you had a number of points that you wanted to raise about about this whole process. And so would you like to share what those might be in terms of deploying the technology internally?
Sure, I'd love to. When you start to think about using content enrichment in your business, in your enterprise, or you really you want to go in with kind of your eyes wide open. So the key is that you have to realize that it's going to require a degree of buy-in across your enterprise, that it's not just a technology selection or a vendor selection. And so I really always break it down to kind of the three key aspects. One is you need to establish it as a practice in your organization. So, and it encompasses many people within the business of publishing and delivering content-based products. It's technology selection for sure, but it's also about how you integrate that technology, and then partnerships, both internal partnerships that you need within your business and within your enterprise, but also external partnerships that you want to establish. And I'll talk about each of these just a little bit more detail. So a practice. So what do we mean by practice? Well, in the case of content enrichment, I see the practice as it's a life cycle. It's something that's ongoing. It does live beyond that first application of content enrichment to your content. And at the top of this practice is the experts. I mean, the experts are who are going to provide the information and the data that you need in order to drive these technologies. And as such, you need to really create and think about tools that you're going to provide them. So sometimes you need more than just those tools for the more complex content enrichment tasks. And you will have some detailed analysis with knowledge engineers and developers in order to implement those. Another really key thing to remember is that you need to manage both the data and the models that you use for content enrichment, just like you do software. So it needs to be controlled and versioned and all those things that you do in order to manage good applications. Because in the end, when you have an issue or you want to look at content or you have a question from a customer, first thing that you want to do is you want to be able to have that ability to trace that back to its origin. The other thing to keep in mind as part of the practice is that you can really use, this is largely a data-driven process. So there's a lot of things you can do outside of releasing software that can drive and enhance and keep up to date your enrichment capabilities, your content enrichment capabilities. So you want to be able to publish those and use a data-driven approach so that you can have much more rapid updates to your capabilities in enrichment. But always, you also need to monitor it. You're going to do, in addition to that initial acceptance and quality testing of any enrichment that you're providing, you need to monitor them over time. And in particular, certain approaches are more vulnerable to others to changes in the use of language, the introduction of new entities, and so forth, some of the things that Daniel talked about earlier. And those are monitored by the expert. So this cycle can go around. So you've got to always keep in mind that you'll have this iteration, this cycle that will be ongoing once you embark on this on content enrichment. From a technology perspective, there's the key thing is that, and then for my approach, I always make sure that I use the word service facade here, but it's the ability, it's the notion of providing some level of abstraction between you and the particular things that you're using that make it better fit into your environment. So in our case, we do leverage semantic web approaches, for example. So we want to make sure that those map. There's also occasions when you have more than one technique that you're using in order to achieve a particular result. So you do want some level of control in that. But the key thing is that it is a service, and by that I mean a web service, something that you can integrate in multiple ways across your environment. One of the most important ones, obviously, is you will be able to integrate it with your CMS, the point at which some of your experts are working. So whether they're manually reviewing metadata that's applied, or they're implementing or creating new things for you, to enhance the enrichment process. But also that same service would serve any of the automated things you have going on as you process a lot of content. But as importantly, it's also the same service that will be used directly by your customers, like for those examples where they were coming in from a website, where they have their own document in their workflow. So they will use that same service ultimately to connect back to your content. So you can then share that metadata across all those environments. Last, but certainly not the least part here, is you need to really establish the partnerships you need to make this successful. Internally, the most critical of those is certainly working with your subject matter experts and providing them the tools they need to help you in this process. And you don't want to require your subject matter experts to become experts on the technology. In the end, you want them to do what they're great at, and that's being the domain experts in the various aspects of what you do in your publishing business. But it also does require collaboration among your market experts, content technology groups, as well as those subject matter experts to ultimately be successful. In addition to internal, you want to look for external partners. And this does require an investment, so you want to make sure that that investment for any external capabilities you're bringing in really support that practice and really try to develop any strategic relationships where you can. So with that, what I'd like to do is ask Daniel to tell me how Temis can really help me with this and help me with my my establishing my practice in my business.
Oh, thanks for the question, Bill. So actually, we really happy to discuss this topic of a practice. And also the notion of service, and which correlates very tightly with our own vision of where we think we need to go in terms of supporting the market. So historically, we've looked at our business in terms of this workflow, which we call semantic enrichment, which takes documents here on the left and processes them to enrich the metadata or to extract data that can be exploited as standalone triples for data products. And we've also seen that very commonly there are other processes surrounding this particular one, and that goes back to the notion of practice. One of the processes that we've seen, almost systematically with our customers is that somewhere they have another process which attempts to organize their worldview in the shape of what people now call an ontology. Some people will refer to their thesaurus or their taxonomy, others to an ontology, depending on what they mean. But essentially, somewhere they have this process that often has already been going on because it's part of what publishers do. It's part of what also some not-for-profits do when they establish themselves with a publishing mandate. So organizing knowledge requires this type of asset, and therefore creating this type of asset and maintaining it over time is a key part of that publishing mission, whether it's in a commercial setting or a non-commercial setting. So we saw that process along the years, and what we saw as well is that the teams who are involved in managing both of these processes may not always be the same teams. So I think you referred to obviously to subject matter experts who are obviously involved in creating and maintaining an organization's ontology or taxonomy or thesaurus. Also in the bottom you will find people who are closer to the IT aspect of things. Do we host these systems? Are they going to be hosted internally, externally? Is it going to be is it going to integrate smoothly with the rest of our IT systems, and so on? And also you have a third category of experts who are often involved, who are linguists, very simply, who know about language. They don't necessarily know about every field, but they do know about how language is organized, and therefore they are well placed to bridge the subject matter experts and the language. So these three communities are typically involved in these projects, and frankly, this is a bit of what the process looks like if you follow me. So there's a first step often which involves porting an ontology or taxonomy into the platform that's going to process text, and that is not necessarily, here on the left, necessarily a straightforward task. But it is a first task that's required, and where you do need a number of these experts to collaborate, both on the IT side, on the subject matter side, and on the linguist side. Once content is processed, often you need to investigate how well an ontology or taxonomy applies to content. Occasionally you'll find very good results. Sometimes you might find a few errors. You'll need to look at those, and you might see that in fact the ontology needs to be modified, or maybe the software system needs to be tuned, and that in fact is typically a cyclical process, whereby every step in the cycle will inform the next. And typically we've seen over the years that projects progress through this cycle maybe a few times before you get to a point where you're satisfied with the quality and the output, and that's when you're typically going to launch this in production. So witnessing this cycle along the years, that led to a question. Quite frankly, the question was, what if we connected these processes, both the top and the bottom, because we were really focused on the bottom part, to make that system very high performance, very high quality output. And we were witnessing the cycle. We were thinking, well, what if we connect the processes? Would that help in any way? And in particular, if the tool in the top, if we were able to support that activity there, would that bring value to this entire life cycle, as you called it earlier? And the point was, we thought, definitely an integrated workflow could bring great benefits. What benefits could it bring? Well, the first benefit that we were aiming at was really to alleviate this first step I was referring to, porting the taxonomy or ontology inside the software platform. We wanted to make that as painless as possible. So what we thought we would be able to do was to synchronize the top and the bottom continuously. So in other words, what we call a skill cartridge, which is the technical component which reads text and processes it, that skill cartridge could be transparently and continuously synchronized with the top side, so that if any change was made to the ontology, well, that would be reflected in the skill cartridge, in the extractor, transparently for users. That was the first benefit that we anticipated. So if you think of your subject matter experts, that means that you don't need to call the IT department anymore to trigger that synchronization. You don't need to call the linguist in to verify that things are being done accurately. It's really transparent. So in other words, you change whatever is in the ontology, you're going to be able to get that reflected technically in the content processing extremely fast, and it's really a question of seconds for that to be reflected if you want it that way. So it's very, very fast now, and what it means is that subject matter experts can become much more autonomous in their work. You don't need to bring everyone in the room for a project checkpoint. It's really a very simple operation. Second benefit that we anticipated was, could we in some way provide a faster preview of results? Would you need to process your entire corpus? That could take, a few hours, maybe a few days. Would you need to, again, involve IT to run that process, or could you do it from the comfort of your desk? And as you'll see in a second, what we've done is really build a real-time preview feature, which enables, again, the subject matter expert from the comfort of their desk to see in a matter of 1 second how a particular term or how a particular concept will be tagged in your actual content. You can upload your content in the tool. You can see in real time how concepts are applied. So that's definitely a benefit. You don't have to wait for next week to know if your work brought improvements to the enrichment. But also what it means is that if you see issues, for example, if you see that a particular concept isn't being picked up, or it's being picked up in places where it shouldn't be picked up, well, you can correct that in real time as well. So what that means is that the cycle time here is being accelerated tremendously. So in a matter of minutes, you're going to be able to reach a level of quality that's satisfying, and you don't have to go through this number of weeks cycle to get there. So massive acceleration on the process here. And lastly, because we think there's also a third benefit here, it's really that the bottom layer, which performs the natural language processing function, will look at the text and will look to see if it finds concepts that seem relevant but that are not yet in the ontology. So what it does is suggest those concepts to subject matter experts so that in the same interface you can get those suggestions and potentially improve the ontology in ways that maybe you haven't anticipated. And again, what we're trying to do here is to streamline the work for the subject matter experts so they can go faster to reach a higher level of quality. So it's really these three benefits that we anticipated. And the good news is that we actually we developed this and we did release it earlier this quarter. And if you look at the tool, what you'll look at is really a web application. It's a server application, very convenient in terms of ergonomics. Looks very, I would say, standard in terms of the way it provides you access to, in this case, a thesaurus. So it's thesaurus about agronomics. For every concept, you'll get the attributes of that concept. And this is fairly, I would say, a standard in terms of what you might expect from such a tool. But then again, you do get these two additional features here on the right side, the preview, which shows you actual sentences coming from your actual corpus where the term occurs. Again, you're going to see positives, but also negatives. So you're going to see errors maybe. That's a way of also locating areas that need to be improved. And you're going to see that in real time in the same interface. So very practical to do that kind of work. And also you get these suggestions. So the tool goes through your corpus, locates interesting concepts, suggests them, and then if they do seem relevant to the subject matter expert, it's just a matter of dragging them and dropping them in the thesaurus or ontology, as new concepts, as alternative labels for a given concept, and so on. So again, it's three concepts that we brought to the fore with this integrated workflow. It's seamless synchronization, so that the work of subject matter experts can be reflected, in a matter of seconds, really, in the extractors. It's about accelerating verification and improvement of quality over time with the real-time preview, and it's about making maintenance much simpler because you get automated suggestions. And by the way, if you don't have a thesaurus, if you don't have an ontology today, the same feature can actually be used to start from scratch. So if you have a corpus, maybe that's all you need to get started. The tool will locate interesting concepts in there, and you can get on your way of starting to build your thesaurus, not from general ideas that you have about your subject matter, but also based on actual words that are being used in the content. So back to you, Bill. That's what we built to support semantic enrichment practices and this life cycle that you mentioned. And I think that you also wanted to share perspectives about how to get such a practice started. So I'd like to give you the microphone again.
Sure. Yeah. So I know if you look at it from the beginning, you talk about practice and all these big things that it seems maybe a little bit intimidating, but there's some light at the end of that tunnel. But so where do you start in doing this? So in the end, I always like to say this: it's not about creating metadata; it's about how you use it. So I could have a single document with the most fantastic metadata on it, but that's really not what we're trying to do. All those examples where I showed you driving value, about how you drive value, it's really in the end how you're using it, integrating into workflow, improving research experiences, and more. So where do you start? Well, in our case, it's very important in my mind, and I've always found this to be the case, that you really want to have a really good focus and start with your business case and work and drive your way down from the business case. Really understand those user stories, those value propositions that you're creating, and what content is needed to create that value proposition. And then comes the technology. I am a technologist, but I'm not a technologist for technology's sake. So you really want to make sure you're really clear on the focus of what you're doing with that technology. Why is that so critical? Well, if you look at the different approaches that you can use to apply metadata, create metadata with content enrichment, there's really a pretty wide spectrum of the effort involved in doing this. So it could be, using a tool like Daniel was showing, you could create and do thesaurus and list extraction, and that requires definitely SME time, but in a very efficient way and very little development time. It might require, the extraction of key patterns in content. So for us, it might be things like citations in Wolters Kluwer, whether they're legal citations or other kind of references. When you go to something like statistical classification, on the other hand, you are requiring a much heavier load on a subject matter expert to collect the training data, to tune the training data, and ultimately to monitor that model that you create over time. So in the end, I mean, the bottom line is all this really, creates a really wide spectrum of cost to implement that approach. So you really want that focus. At Wolters Kluwer, we are using something my colleague Greg Merkel has pioneered called Previs. And he actually spoke about this at the an FIA conference, I think back in maybe in June or so. And I think that's available for folks to find in your archives. But it's really about a multidisciplinary approach where you get all the key stakeholders together to really drive that focus, and that includes obviously the UX, but also your editorial and domain experts and product teams as well as technology. So that you come out with a really clear focus on what that problem is that you want to solve, and ultimately, in the case of from the business model, have something to take out for market validation and derive this MVP or minimum viable product. So I just want to kind of wrap up with some of the takeaways I think you should take from this overview. One is I firmly believe that semantic enrichment adds value to a publishing business in a number of ways. So one is it creates that new opportunities and new value opportunities for those content assets you already have. I mean, they're a huge investment that's been made. You continue to invest in them. You can then use them to continue to create value or find new value. You can support the experts in delivering that expertise to your customers, ultimately what they need. And you can get that insight about your customers by having the data on the content that they use, the content that they look for, and drive the analytics that we're all striving to get in order to improve our businesses. Another thing is to always remember it is a practice. So while you can start by looking at the technology, make sure you have your eyes open on that. You need to know that you will involve multiple parts of your enterprise to make it successful, with a particular focus on those that drive the expertise in the business. When you get started, you can get started and start small. I mean, the good thing is you start to do this. You can do it incrementally. You don't have to, as they say, boil the ocean. You can, with that focus that you derive from whatever business process you use to identify your products, you can then be successful in driving and bringing content enrichment into your enterprise. And then practice does require a platform. So from a technical perspective, you do want something that you can adapt and extend very easily. You want to be able to use it in all the parts of your enterprise that you need the enrichment, from your CMS to your content processing and ultimately to your customers. So in the end, if you're doing this well, you can use it to drive new value, accelerate your ability to get new products to market, and start to look at ways to get more, improve the productivity and get more value out of your experts so they can work on less mundane tasks. So Daniel, is there anything you'd like to add to that, to the takeaways?
No, just like to confirm that this is precisely the direction that we're aiming for, and definitely the term platform, as far as we're concerned, is really key. What happened for us this year is that we extended really what we meant by platform. In the past, we meant the server part, which processes content in an automated way to enable publishers to make productivity gains in that stage, and also providing tools so that customers could customize the platform and really mold it to focus on their own worldview. But now what we mean by platform is also supporting that life cycle that you referred to, and noticing that these assets will evolve over time, and that subject matter experts are a big part in that equation. We wanted to provide a system which seamlessly bridges the gap between those three communities of users that we refer to: IT, linguists, and subject matter experts. And that's what we're striving to do today. And we feel that it's a key stage essentially in the development of these practices, is to make that process as efficient as possible. And I think that's precisely what you were pointing out here. So I think Matt, we're almost done with our content. Did you want to step back in?
Absolutely. I think at this point we can open it up for Q&A. To submit your questions, please look at the chat column in the left-hand side of your screen. You can choose to all panelists, and you can type in your questions that way. We do have a couple of questions queued up right now, and I'm going to go ahead and dive into that. I think this is addressed to both of you, but how many documents do you need to define a feature, and how good is your precision or recall in recognizing a feature?
So, Bill, do you want me to step in, or do you want to start?
You go ahead and
sure.
I'll let you go.
Yeah. So I think those are good questions. It's hard to answer in a single way, but we tend to find a variety of different expectations in terms of quality. Kind of rule of thumb is we strive for something around 80% of quality, and we find that in many cases that's going to be I think very satisfactory for a lot of customers. Some applications actually require lower quality. Some customers feel that for certain products they don't need to be that high, but also in other cases, customers feel that they need to have an extremely high level of quality, typically when the application is very sensitive. So I'm thinking of cases like anonymization of case law. That's something that we do in some in some instances, and in those cases, well, the target is going to be 99% because you don't want to be sued by somebody who has their name displayed on the internet wrongly. So typically in those cases, when extreme quality is expected, we do expect that the tool can provide the lion's share of that quality number, but also we have many cases where the technology is deployed in a hybrid process where human operators will check quality, but again, it's mostly for those extreme quality cases, and in most circumstances, 80% is kind of a rule of thumb target for these kind of applications. I think there's also a question about the number of documents required. It's a good question. I think that it's tough to answer off the bat, but we're talking hundreds to thousands of documents, I think is a good starting point. It's not as though the number of documents really ties into the quality in the sense that more documents means more quality. It's more in the sense that you want to have a representative share of your corpus to look at when you're investigating quality. So depending on the type of feature, some features might be very frequent, others less frequent. So it's more from that angle that you would want to look at it. And I think the tool I showed earlier, the spirit of that tool is that you might expect to have something on the order of thousands to tens of thousands of documents loaded in the corpus there. So it's not as though you need to have hundreds of thousands of documents necessarily to get started. On the contrary, you might find that a few tens of thousands might be more than enough. That's my viewpoint.
Very good.
So I can add a little bit of that if you like, a little bit of additional insights to that. So, what we found, there's two parts to it. You're always making actually a decision typically between what is more important to you, precision versus recall. And you can target, obviously, and typically as you target precision, your recall will go down. But that said, what we also do is, and that's why we take this hybrid approach in the way we do enrichment, is there are things that are not necessarily really the purview of that tool that are relevant to your business and add business logic to improve that precision and recall that fall outside the initial application of the tool. So, and that's where in creating your technology environment in a way that you can then leverage a series of things to get to the level of quality that you need for your particular application. And it does, and as Daniel mentioned, that we do often want to leverage in some scenarios that kind of addition of human interaction with the system to bring it to that next level, to this really high precision level. So that's one approach that we use in order to kind of get the most out of the system, letting the automated technology do a lot of the big heavy lifting, and then using some additional custom work to really make it at the level we need for our products.
Thanks, Bill. Just a reminder to our audience, you can submit your questions via the chat function in the left-hand column of your screen. Just type in your questions and choose to all panelists. We'll answer the questions in order. Next question. That technology sounds very promising. Do you have comparisons between purely statistical approaches versus your linguistic approach? Dan, I think this is targeted to you.
Okay. So again, great question. Hard to answer. The fact of the matter is that over the years, we in fact started with the linguistic approach, but I think that it's fair to say that every technology, every approach, every school essentially of information extraction, as in other domains, I think has advantages and disadvantages, and therefore we really took the stance over the years that we wanted to step back from providing a single approach to this, and we wanted in fact to combine approaches because we felt that depending on the use case, one technology might offer better trade-offs than others. So in fact our platform expanded, for the past 7-8 years, we've been expanding the range of techniques. So there is statistics in there. There is linguistics or morphosyntactic reasoning, as we talk about it. There's machine learning. We do categorization. We do a number of approaches, thesaurus-based or ontology-driven workflows. And what we're trying to do really is to provide our customers with a large gamut of options so that whatever the use case, you'll find in the platform a combination of techniques that can help you achieve your goals. So really we're providing a mix, in fact, and not a single one of those options. And in terms of comparing the quality, it's a long discussion, but I think as Bill charted it earlier, I think some of these techniques are fairly simple to implement, especially if you have let's say a good starting point in terms of your assets. Maybe a thesaurus is of great help. An annotated corpus is of great help. Those two assets are really a good starting point, and they help you get started, but they don't necessarily get you all the way. And that's why you need to typically combine a number of the techniques to go higher on the quality curve to reach your goals typically. But I think some of the techniques are a small investment in terms of effort, so it's maybe a good starting point. And then depending on your goals, depending on the applications you want to build, you may step into some things that are a bit more involved, require a bit more effort. But it's a good way of staging your projects, I think, and that's what I think Bill was referring to that earlier.
Very good.
Bill, any perspective?
No, that's about right. So it's always, again, it's about that matching your actual goal with the return on the investment for that goal, and using. And I will correct that you often wind up using a combination of approaches in order to achieve that goal. So it's a very case-by-case basis, which is better for the particular scenario. And that's where that initial investigation and that focus comes in, to make sure you have a very focused problem that you're trying to solve.
Good. Guys, we've had a couple very technical questions. I've got one that's geared maybe more toward culture. Bill, you gave a nice breakdown of the steps needed to really implement this within your organization. I'm just curious, what was the response from your staff with this? Were there any specific questions, issues that you needed to deal with that you would give anyone listening a real heads up about?
No, it's just about like many things, right? You're trying to, as I say, win hearts and minds, and to win hearts and minds, it's about making sure you put yourself in their shoes. And in this case, it's that subject, a subject matter expert or domain expert, and I'm kind of using those somewhat synonymously here. So in our case, the domain expert might be in legal practice or whatever. Really understand what their job is, and it's just like if you treat the things that you're doing, you're in effect creating a product for them internally to do their job, and recognize that, and that you will get that return on the investment in that user value. That's really the key thing. Don't go into this in a way that says where your plan is to impose a technology on them, right? You want to help them drive that in that collaboration to build the things they need to do that work. That's probably the biggest one, and that's usually the biggest hurdle to get there, is that you make sure that you as a provider of this capability are working with the rest of the enterprise, because in the end it does benefit the entire enterprise, but you do need their input.
Okay, very good. Folks, we are about out of time, so we're going to stop the webcast here. If you do have additional questions, the contact information for our speakers is listed here on the last slide. This webcast is being recorded, and an archive will be made available by the end of this week. Bill and Daniel, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure.